よはじねよはじねはよはじねよはじねあべによべによべによべによはいへよべによべによはいへはよはじねよはじね
Welcome back to Voices for the Earth. I'm your host, Violet, and today's guest is Norma Jacobs. So, for this interview, we'll just be starting off with your introduction.
Scano, guy who want come gaso, not to home we wish no once again. He drunk get going, not to home we a knosalt, got to again, not to home we wish no once again. Not that you only nigga shout there, got your corner, nigga once a day. Hi, my name's Norma, my English name. And I live here at Six Nations. I've been here all my life and was born here and raised here. I do, I was curious a lot about things because from older people, I always heard them say how much or how beautiful our culture was and that we had the greatest democracy. And my friend, she's a Seneca lady, she's passed now, but she told me, she said, did you know that we have the greatest democracy? And because at that time, people used to say we were stupid. You know, we didn't know nothing. We were just dumb. And so I didn't want to appear that way. So I told her, I said, yeah, I know that. You know, and so I came home and I thought, what the heck was she talking about? Democracy. I don't know what that means. So I was talking with my dad and my mom, and I tell them where I was and what I heard and things like that. But so I would ask them things, and sometimes they would tell me, and then sometimes they thought, well, I don't know that either. What that is. So, anyways, I came to understand what democracy was by just talking with different people and asking questions. So I became really interested in it because it sounded so beautiful. And so I started learning, and my mom, because she was in a residential school, she never talked to us very much and never explained things to us. And she would always say, if you want to know something, go to the longhouse. Then what you say is called there, asa no done he. Gano say is I'll say. Tonhoe Gaya Grego Hodati say asa no done he. Like you'll find every answer that you want there in the longhouse. So I used to go there, and because I didn't understand and they were only speaking in a language. So I would sit there and I would listen. And pretty soon I went to a condolence ceremony and and I listened, and I found that I understood everything. I was so happy, and I went home and I told my mom. I said, "Mom, I just understood everything they said over there," and she just nodded her head. She wasn't overjoyed or ecstatic about that. And so I thought, well, anyways, I felt good because I could understand. So I started paying more attention to that and ceremonies and, and trying to, I guess, to help people to understand because at that time, a lot of people weren't coming to Longhouse. And I always heard people say, we don't have hardly any people here. Like we're a very small group, and we need more people. So that caught me, and I started to think, well, I got to really listen because I need to understand myself, and take it in myself and look at it and, and really understand what that means, like these words, because I would pick up words and watch the process, like of ceremony, um, and because I could understand the language, and at that time it was like healing and wellness strategy. So I told my friend, she's passed away now, but um, we worked together and we developed the Haudenosaunee Communications, and it was like to educate people, like in surrounding communities, about Haudenosaunee knowledge, ceremonies, because they wanted people to come back. And so, anyways, we worked at that for a few years, but we got funding from the government, so from the healing and wellness strategy. So they only funded us for those 2 years, and they cut our program. So we did a lot of like education with people, clarifying language. What does language really mean? How do you say this and what does it mean? So um, that's how I got interested in helping people, and so we did programming for kids from 13 to 17, youth, and because they were the ones that were missing out, there was this great big gap in, having programs in the summer for kids or March break. So we started that, and we got people from our community to show them, like, we knew who was doing beadwork and who was doing leather work and, all kinds of crafts. So we asked them if they would come and share their workings with the students, with the people who were coming, and if they could tell a story, because understood stories were really important. Like, I grew up with stories, and so I got them there, and we only had a week to work with them for a March break, and those kids were so excited. Like, we didn't have transportation, but we gave them good meals 3 times a day, and we fed them well. So at the end of the day, they didn't want to go home because they wanted to work at their crafts. They want to be with people who were telling them stories. So, and sometimes they would be there before we even got there. So that was a really joy for me, to experience that, because I had thought that's what was missing, was people talking to them about who we were, who we are. And so I did that, and then pretty soon we started going out to different communities. Like, we went to Saskatchewan, and, further out to other places, and to talk about that. And in Saskatchewan, those men were really surprised, and they said nobody ever told us that, about culture, or talked to them about their ceremonies. Um, so that was like a shock to me. But they were really happy, that they really thanked us for coming out there to share that information. So I taught at FNTI because I knew how to make donuts, and she asked me if I would come, and teach that. So we start talking about stories and what those donuts were, and why we had them, and we start talking about relationships. And so got interested in that, and I worked at FNTI for, I think, probably maybe about 7 or 8 years, and then I worked at McMaster. I taught a course for spirituality, and then I was there, the counselor too, for students there, um, and I liked being with the students because it was celebrating them, and because I knew the stories from the code, that I could hear them, like, crying, because they said they don't know if they're crying or if they're just having fun. They couldn't identify what the sound was. So when I went in, I heard them crying. I heard voices crying. So I used to get them together and talk about teachings and stuff, and I celebrated them. Like, we had a birthday once a month for whoever's birthday was in that month. And so anyways, I finished there, and then I went to teach in Buffalo, and at School 19. And that was an experience for me, because I was trying to teach culture, because I knew it was valuable, and they're living in a city. And it was supposed to be a Indian school. So when I went there, and he didn't like it, that the principal didn't like it, because I wasn't, he said I wasn't doing my job. And I said, well, I'm teaching them about who they are, and he said, well, if you don't teach them in a good way, the way that their school is asking, then I'll have to fire you. And I said, well, you can't fire me. And he said, I can't. And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because I quit. So, and before that, I went to George Brown College. I learned about alcohol and drugs and addictions and mental health. And so, because when I was married, I had a lot of issues with my partner, who was abusive and violent and was a drinker. So I graduated from there, and my teacher kept telling me that I was going to fail, because I said, I'm going to ceremonies. I'm not going to be here next week. And so he said, well, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. And I said, I don't care. I'm going to ceremony. So I would go, and I'd come back, and I had a high average when I passed out of that course. And so I went to work in Seneca Nation as a outreach worker, helping people with alcohol problems. And so aftercare program, I worked there between Seneca Nation and Allegheny. So it really was about, like, just knowing the culture and how much it had affected our people. This was before I even understood what colonization was, but I could see how our people were so lost. And I seen it before, when I was growing up, because I used to babysit for people, and that's what I seen all the time. And I always thought, like, where is this peace that our people are supposed to be living? So anyways, so I got really interested in that, and then I came home, and we did that program for Wenhoudan. We developed that, Wenhoudan Communications, and then in the process, they had a calling for someone in Wisconsin. And so I said, I'm going to apply for that, because we didn't know if we were going to get funded or not. So I applied for that job. It was a alcohol and drug program. So I went out there. I got the job. So I went out there, and I was only there for probably about 2 months, and we got an answer and said we got funded. And I said, well, can I work between, like, there and here? And my partner, who said that I worked with her, and she said, no. She said, you get back here. You wanted this program, she said, so get back here. So I came home, and we did that program, and I helped her a lot too, because she didn't really understand, like, language. And so I told her, I said, well, we have, like, a lot of healing going on in our ceremony. I said, that's what we have ceremonies for, is it's helping us to heal. And so she said, I didn't know that. So I said, you just listen. I said, there are 3 words that they talk about all the time. So she listened, and then she asked her son because he was really participating in a language program. So she asked him, and he agreed. He said, yeah, those are the words there. So after that, I just got called for, to do different workshops. And I worked for the University of Oklahoma and lots of places, like just doing workshops. Like in the summer, we'd call and, or we'd submit a proposal to go, and they would pay us and travel, So I did a lot of that. So I've been across Canada, and then I worked in the States as well with Agnes Williams. She's at she went to UB, and she had a program called Indigenous Women Network. So I worked with them for a while and traveled all over, like learning about different nations of people and the troubles we were having. So I got educated by them. They were all older women. And I found myself to be really interested in that. Like, and I was raising my awareness about all of the issues that were facing our people. So I taught a course there at UB. It was called Savage Women, and I really liked that name. That's why I went there. But yeah, so got involved in people hearing me talk. So I worked at Laurier for 4 or 5 years, 2 in Bradford, and then I've been over at Laurier in Kitchener. So I'm just finishing up this week there, and my job there was to work with the PhD students, and like I learned a lot about the university, like even when I was at Mac, and all of the control that they have in education. Like you got to be specific, and it's like it was really stressful. And I told it, I said like, why do they cause so much stress? And then I seen all this conflict about money, that they're fighting over funding for their program, whatever. So I didn't like that. And I said, do you always do this? Like, you're always fighting for money? And they said, yeah. And it's like, why can't they just distribute it evenly, amongst all the universities so that the people can learn, But yeah, so that's pretty much where I've been learning is I wrote a book about gathering our stories and reflecting on our stories, and it's called Onda Kahotas, because we're supposed to be getting to that place of compassion by sharing and understanding one another and having conversations and being clear after we left that we didn't have any questions, you know, because we understood perfectly what they were talking about on both sides, So I always seen myself as a bridge builder, like between me and other nations of people, because I did learn from Ojibwe people in the beginning, because they spoke English, and at the Longhouse they didn't. Like in our ceremonies, they don't use English, so I had to learn the hard way. But it was very impactful, and it led me to all of these places because I knew who I was, and people tried to change me, like in the university, and I was like, I'm not doing that because that's not for the university. That's ceremony. I'm not doing that. So yeah, so I right now I work with victims of trauma from they're immigrants, and they're in Toronto, and I work with them because they're facing a lot of issues as well, because they've been displaced just like we were from, across the country from different territories. So I work with them, and they're really, excited about learning about Indigenous people because they said nobody ever told us that before. They never talked about Indigenous people being here in Canada when they came over here. And I said, well, nobody asked us if you could come here. I said, and like, this is our country. And I said, nobody's ever come to us and said, well, we're thinking about bringing immigrants in. Is that okay with you? I said, so they were very invasive. And I said, and, they brought all these plants too, and, different things that were invasive as well, foods and I said, and like, how does, you know, we do ceremony for our food, everything that we grow or, go and harvest maple trees. I said, we have a ceremony for everything. I said, and so all of these plantations that, buy the bananas and pineapples and all of that, I said, where's their ceremony? Because it's in their country. And they said, well, they get bought out by all these corporations, and so they have all of these plantations of bananas and they're just sprayed and, and they covered them with plastic and all of those things just seep into the fruit. And I said, where's their ceremony? Like, that's what's lacking is ceremonies, I said, maybe the Indigenous people who live there, maybe they did have practices like that. But because they were bought out, like, who does a ceremony now? So it's just, I don't know, my mind just would go a mile a minute and, thinking about all these things that, that our people had held so sacred, in doing ceremonies and, is it the right time? When do you go tap trees and, all of these things. So, I've just been talking a lot about that and, trying to get people to change their minds about like looking after the earth and looking after themselves because they got to look after themselves before they can see that how precious like the earth is, what she gives to us, and all we have to say is thank you, Nyawa. So um, I've traveled a lot of places and I really like learning from the old people. Like I like hearing when they had laughter and working together, and everybody was always happy, and they always included me. Like, she's such a good worker, or just ask her and she'll do it. And so I still do that today. Like, if I know something's going on, well, my mom always told me, she said, when you go to ceremonies, she said, or you go somewhere and they need food, she said, you always take something with you. Don't ever go empty-handed, so, I learned all of those things about sharing and, honoring people and helping and taking care of them too. I had lots of aunties and they did so many things like making corn husk dolls and I could see my uncle and his mother, they had a little mud house and they used to have, like, I'd walk in there and you'd see all the corn and the beans and they're just hanging from the walls, and you could hear them rustling like in the wind when it was windy. So it was, to me, it was the greatest time of my life to be able to have those old people, to be there to learn from them, even if they weren't talking directly to me. So I worked on farms like suckering tobacco, picking berries, and canning and harvesting beans, and like all over the place, like in Burlington, Oakville, and over in Otterville. We are always busy. My mom always made us go and work somewhere. And my grandma's always told me, get out there early in the morning. She said, and you work really fast. She said, because it's cool yet. Get get your work done. She says, and then in the afternoon you can just take your time because it's hot. Then just take it easy because you got most of your berries picked, or cherries or apples, whatever. So that's pretty much how I learned to be involved in learning about culture. And then after my granddaughter was murdered, that even drove me even further into culture because I was so broken, and and I was so angry, and and I couldn't see, just like he was talking today. You can't talk and you can't see people. You just see darkness. So I had to go to a lot of like I was still teaching at FNTI. We went up north and I went to Mount McKay and Thunder Bay, and I walked along those or they were little short trees, shrubs, and they said we're going to pick medicine. So we went out there, and as I was walking, like I could feel something like touch my shoulder, and I thought it was somebody, and so I turned around and there's nobody there, but there was a branch on my shoulder. And so I just, noticed it, and I start picking some more buds from the tree. And I must have walked like maybe from here to the bush over there. And it was just that somebody was kept tapping me on the shoulder because they all wanted to help me. So that was really amazing that time. That really helped me a lot to recognize that for myself, because it wasn't until I got back to the class that I realized that the plants were actually alive and they could feel my pain. So, and that was, just blew me away because how sacred a time that was for me, to be engaged and to, have them come and do a ceremony for me, like touching my shoulder and brushing me off. So that was amazing. I have lots of amazing experiences. Like when I go to do a workshop and I come home and all these people come by my bed, and it's nighttime and I'm in bed, and I see all these elders and they're got their shawl on and they're sitting around my bed, and I thought, I'm dreaming. This is a dream. And I sit up and they're all sitting there, and I said, what do you want? Why are you here? And they don't answer me. But so I lay down again, and it's like I can still feel them watching me. Like so, and I sit up and they're still there. I was like, what do you want? Like, you know, why are you here? And but they never answer me. They just sit there. And I felt that it was like they were thanking me for bringing them forward, and talking about them and the experiences of healing, and how powerful women are. So the other thing that happened to me was I was laying in bed, and all these little corn husk dolls were sliding down a rope, like, and they were coming down, and they were just like dangling from the ceiling, and they were kind of dancing, and I thought, I wonder how come they're here. But I never figured that one out. But yeah, I have lots of experiences like that. Like even understanding like language, how important that was, because when they moved the fire, like and they're cleaning out the longhouse and taking it to the new longhouse, like I've seen some elderly ladies from Seneca when they built the new Onondaga longhouse, and when we were going in there, and I looked in, and here all these old people were sitting on that high bench, all the way around the men's side, and they all had turkey headdresses on. So I knew they were old, because we don't have those anymore. And their buckskin was just dark brown, but it was like I could see how old it was, like even standing at the door, and I could see their like, because some of them still had fringe on it, on their outfits, and but they were sitting all around the outside, and I looked and I was like, wow. I looked at these two ladies because I was helping them, and I said, did you see that? And they said, see what? And I said, all those people, all those ancient beings, I said, they were all sitting in there waiting for us to come into the new building, because that's who we brought first. We addressed them, and this was a teaching. This is a way of, moving the fire. And, they were gathering all of this medicine for us to have there in the longhouse. So all the ceremonies, whatever was going on, they brought all of that. And so I was like, I felt so, I don't know, just so in awe, I guess, of that experience, because I never realized like how important language was until I seen that. So I just I just have so many like things like that that have happened to me, and it makes me feel honored that they can come and they can just sit there and not speak to me, but somehow they're telling me something. I've had dreams when I go to travel somewhere that I've already been there, because in my dream I dreamt about that place. So um, I did like, and I don't recognize it when I'm there until I was coming home, and then somebody would give me a piece of the rock, because that was in Guatemala, and it was a black rock, and I had dreamt about that. That I was in this place because I was hanging on to the mountain. This woman took me up to the mountain, and she said, hang on tight. She said, because we're going to go out into the water. So I hung on to that thing, and I could hear it break away from the mountain, like just a piece of it. And we went out really fast. And then she said, okay, this is far enough. And then she said, hang on, because we're going to go back. So we went back, and I could hear it again as it clicked, because it became attached back to that mountain again. And when we were coming home, and this lady gave me a piece of that rock, and I thought, this is what I was dreaming of. That's that black rock, that black mountain, the stone that comes from that area. Like she gifted me that, and I was here before. I seen that water, and how everything, like I looked into the water and I could see all these stones, and they were all different color, and the water was just clear. So that one I dreamt about being there before. So
Can you talk a little bit more about how, like, the change in Haudenosaunee society had an effect on the environment?
um well, we have so many teachings, and I think that you really have to think about, like, in terms of ceremony and language, And, you have to go to the source. And I think that's why we have stories. That's why we've had these experiences, because I'm always wondering, like, what was going on when the code came? What was going on when the Great Lock had to be, brought in? What was happening there, and how were our people living? And like, and I have all of these questions, and I keep rolling it around in my mind, and so when I work a lot with the water. We're doing studying the fish and all of that, and the Grand River, and and I think about the ceremonies that we have, and I know that we're not doing all of them the way that they used to be done a long time ago. So my moms used to always say um, "Esadadisnya." So she said that's the first thing in the morning to think about, and that's preparing yourself. Like, so she said, wash your face and, comb your hair. But there's more than that, because you have to acknowledge every part of your body that it's working, and that you have good health. So once you do that and give thanks for your being, and then you think about sadaknokwak, like, be good to yourself. So you eat good food. You do good things for yourself, like work in a garden or clean your home or do your laundry, or, but it's all for you. And you're preparing for the day, so by then, you give thanks to outside, to the environment, to the sun, to the, all of those elements, and then after doing all of that, like, you've already gone through your own mind, and you've given thanks for all your body parts, and that you can move, that you can stand, and, do things that are normal things, like going to the bathroom, or, washing your face, doing all of that. Well, then you walk with pride, and sadat cueños, my mom used to say. Like, think highly of yourself, and walk with that, like, because people, like, I've heard a phrase that says, when you walk in someplace that, you know, look like the Creator sent you. Like, so that's how we should be, because the Creator did send us here, to experience this beautiful place. But we forgot how to look at it. We forgot how to appreciate it, So, a lot of those things that we've forgotten, the simple things about honoring who we are, looking at those things that are functioning without us having to tell ourselves to wake up, or to brush our teeth, or comb our hair, or, just bathe ourselves to be clean, and then we move outside of ourselves to our home, how we dress, how we eat, all of those things. And then, so when you go out, you've done all of these things, and then you walk with that pride, that dignity. And because of our colonization and all of those effects of trauma, we forgot how to honor who we are, to really understand the purpose of what ceremony is all about. Like, even in a garden now, we plant our garden, and I was told that those gardens are like our children. That's our family, because they're sustaining us, and we got to talk to them. We sing ceremonious songs when we go to plant for planting ceremony. We sing to our seeds so that they can, we're honoring them. We go out there and we put our seeds in the ground, and we sing to them, and we put supports in for them. And, so that they're not falling over. And we talk to them, talk when you go out in a garden. And every sweat that you have when you're out there is going into the ground and it's coming back through your plants, and like now we have a lot of water issues. And I think that, for our plants, um, there's no water in there anymore. Not like how I remember from a long time ago. Like we didn't have to drink water. People didn't tell us like you got to drink 8 glasses of water a day because it was already in our food, and the food was abundant. I remember my dad used to have a big garden, and we sustained ourselves because he had animals too, pigs and chickens and in our gardens, and we would eat, and my mom would preserve all of that food. So now, like, hardly anybody, I don't think, boils their strawberries and put them in a jar because it's easier just to throw them in a freezer, and like we've lost that time of, spending with our food, and really putting our own energy into that because I was told that too was when we go to Longhouse to ceremony that you fix something, like, you bake something or, you prepare your own food to take there. Don't buy from the store because you don't know if they're on their time or, if they were drinking or smoking or whatever. And they're making all this food and we're taking it in our body where we could, she would say, Isa Wena. When you take something to the longhouse for ceremony, you fixed it. You grew it in your garden, and that's your voice. That's your words, that's your thankfulness that you give to those plants, to that food, and to honor that ceremony that we're going to. So I think that we don't think enough, that depth of thinking, when we go to ceremony to really think about why do we have this ceremony, and I think it's because we're not doing things right that we're having all of these issues in the environment with our families, with everything that's in creation right now. The water, like, we're talking about water sacred, and I said, well, how come you pee in the water? Like, because we have all inside toilets now. It's like, that's not, holding water sacred. And, like, about the food, like, I remember when we used to have an outhouse, and we used to just, clean it every weekend. And we never had to worry about moving it because it was always decomposing because we grew our own food. It was going back into the earth. We didn't have to worry about it bothering our wells. We had good water and our trees and everything was healthy. So like there's just so much that I think we're missing um, about putting our own energy into the things that we do and really being conscious of, how we care for things, you know, having that discipline, and really understanding like why are we here? What's our responsibility and how do we carry that through in a good way? So I think, that's how come we have hurricanes and, the big winds because long time ago they prophesied that, and that was a teaching to prepare us to remember to look after things because it's just like our old people. They get old and where do we put them in a nursing home? And we forget about them because we think they're the experts over there. They can look after them. And we don't go to see them because they have laws that you can't go in if you're sick or because you might, because they're all close together so the germs can just flow. through that place. So I think of it in that way, that we don't go out and pick the berries. Like, what's going to happen to them? They're going to say, well, they don't come out after us anymore to meet us halfway, to show that they're happy we're here again, we're coming to visit, and we're coming to cheer them up, because here we are, we're on this journey. We've come from a long way, and it took us a whole year to come back. So I think of it in terms of those white the people in the nursing home, and just to gathering like hickory nuts. Like, we used to pick hickory nuts all the time. We used to decorate our cake with it, put it in our cooking, everything. Walnuts. We don't do that anymore. Our kids are too lazy to go out and, oh, this is too hard work, I'm bored, because we haven't taught them the importance of that food. What does it do for our minds? Those nuts, like, they're having that oil, to help us know. So I think a lot of that, like the pollution that comes from the factories, from, the restaurants, from the bathrooms, from the hospitals, all of that is going into our water, into the land. And that's why we're confused. And my mom used to talk about that. She'd say, when you have your baby, you're supposed to bury the baby's umbilical cord. If you're a girl, by the house. If it's a boy, you plant them in the garden or over there in the woods somewhere, because that's their place. And I said, we don't do that anymore. Like, we don't put our umbilical cord. Well, my family does, because I keep telling them. But, we miss out on that practice. Like, a lot of people here don't do that, and my mom said, when you have your baby, like, and if you don't take that home, they just put it in a furnace and it blows, like the ashes just blow everywhere. She said, no wonder our minds are scattered. She said, and our kids aren't, like, they're not focused, because all of that is blowing around somewhere. We can't find it. The same with that umbilical cord. She said, you're supposed to bury it. She says, not keep it in your house. And she says, because when those kids are climbing around on a furniture or climbing on a cupboard, or they climb everywhere, she said they're looking for their belly button, because it's not buried. It's somewhere up in a house somewhere. And they're looking for it because it needs to be buried. And that's the kids. So, there's a lot of things that we miss out on, and all the old stories. And that's why we're story people. We had all these stories that were there for our discipline, for our knowledge of how to take care of our families, like Jock was talking about today. Like, we needed each other to build that house. And, and I think about that too, about the Haudenosaunee, like, we're house builders. It's like, if you don't go to Longhouse, then how can you be a house builder? Because you're not following the values that are the basis for that weaving in the basket. That's not a foundation that's, supporting you and nurturing you, because you're mixed up in some other kind of world or whatever. So, yeah, and I think it's because we've moved away and not performing or practicing our medicines. Like I said earlier, like, it's hard to get people to come and do a medicine healing ceremony for our people. Either they're too tired, or they got somewhere else to go. Like, we get distracted by lacrosse sports, and, oh, well, that's the great laws going on. Like, people are out playing lacrosse or going to a tournament, or something else is more important. So I think we're being taught what's important is this land, and all of those gifts that we see every day, like that tree out there. My son planted that when I moved here, which is probably 40 years ago. And the other day when it was so windy, and I looked out there and I was like, that tree was just dancing. The leaves were turning over and it was almost bent right in half. It was so, the wind was so powerful, but it looked really nice. It was just like waving and weaving and to me that's beauty, and but other people don't see it that way. So every day I walk out that door, I go out to the front, and I think this is what that Ganokwasha is about, is to have all of these plants, to have life, to be able to see the sun, and to be able to move about, and give thanks for what was given to us. And all we have to do is say Nyawa. So, you know, the hurricanes, and all the volcanic eruptions, I think is because we're not doing our job. And it's responding. The earth's responding, the water's responding, because they're dumping all this garbage, like, and it's destroying their energy. The air is not good anymore. My mom used to talk about that. She said one day, she said they're going to walk around, they're going to have a mask on. It's getting to that point. I remember 40 years ago, I went to Denver, and there was this film just over the land, and it was blue, a blue haze. Now we see it here, and it's because of pollution, and we can't stop the, that's why we go out, I guess, to do education or share stories, is to teach other people, like, about sacredness, because people forgot about that, because they're so money hungry, and that takes over. And I always think about Dan George in Vancouver. Like, how many years ago was that when he used to say, only until you eat the last fish will you realize that you can't eat money, and we're finding that out. And like, that was 40 years ago, and we still haven't learned that. They're still keeping those people in the East from fishing for their family because the fisheries want to control everything. And so, we have lots of stories in our environment, that talks about that coming of greed, and how that was going to overtake our people, you know. So most of the times I just sit here and I think about all those things, and I was like, oh, that's something else I could talk about. But yes, I think that, our ceremonies are not taken seriously enough, and to really think about the depth of protection that it has for us, to keep servicing our needs, that we have as human beings. Um, and and we forgot about the source of those, why it was here, you know. So even like the water, like, they used to talk about, like, we used to get water from the Mackenzie Creek here, my dad, and we'd go on a tractor and get these great big barrels of water, and that would last us for a week, And we can't get water out there because there's too many cigarette butts being dumped along the waterways, and they're dredging all the time. And, I had a well here and I can't drink it because they had to dig down so deep. And, it was just hard water, And, and because they're putting in all of these ditching in the woods, and they're even building now on our waterways, to old swamps, and they just fill it with gravel and they build a house on it. It's like, what's wrong with people? Why are they doing things like they forgot about water, how sacred it is, that we need it, for our lives to continue. And I think we forgot about tomorrow, that a lot of our um, people don't just live today. And it's not a wrong, or it's not a negative thing for them. It's because they don't learn the stories. They haven't learned because of colonization, so they don't know about sacredness of water, of land, of air, so it's really not their fault, of that disconnect. Um, but I think that's why we're building these um, awareness, like go out and talk about things, because we want them to know, because it's preparing them for tomorrow. Um, so our greatest gift, I think, is to remember. To People think that when you talk about old times, that you want to live the old way, that you're going to be without hydro or running water, but it's not like that. It's about bringing those teachings and honoring them, and celebrating them, what we have left, because I think even in celebration and honoring, that we can still purify the water, that we can still purify that air, so that we can still help the fish, to survive, if we just are more conscious of our, of the practices that we do, and that we pray, and prayers, really like it's about Gaiwanega, like those layers of words that we have, that um, to always be conscious of what those fish mean to us, or the water, and really taking into consideration how we live our life, because there's phases yet that are still coming, and what are we going to leave for them? Like, and I think that's what non-Indigenous people don't think about. Like, they're just here for today, you know. They're not concerned about, their kids, their own kids, So it's like there's a lot to, I think, that in Oneida they say tat um they gonna no, like it's only halfway, it's only half full, that they don't know and understand what life is about. They just want to control everything. And that comes from the doctrine of discovery, to take control of everything, the animals, the land, so. But I think, like, it's awareness building, to reteach and, reinstill in people's minds the importance of who we are and the ways that were given to us in order for us to, um, you know, help everybody, especially our people, because that can cause a ripple for other people to look at, and say, well, how did, like, and my dad used to say, they're coming over here because they want to know how we made it this far. Even, he said, they're coming here to learn. So when I get angry at non-Indigenous people for their behaviors, I always think about my dad. And what he said was, they're coming here to learn. So that means that I got to know, because how am I going to teach if I don't know about my own self, about my own culture? So that's what I think is important for us, is to, really be sharing this knowledge and, celebrating who we are and really taking into consideration like the meaning of ceremony and what are we leaving out because we're too in a hurry to go to hockey or lacrosse or golf and, do all of these sports things and, like what's the purpose? I don't I don't see knocking around a ball out in the middle of nowhere into a little hole.
So, my final question is, what message do you have for the youth today and the future generations?
Pardon?
What what message do you have for the youth today and the future generations?
Oh, I think that you can learn so much every day and take an interest and to really focus on the gifts that are provided to us by the Creator. And like really be proud of your heritage, your of who you are. Like I mentioned earlier, was give thanks for who you are. Like there's nobody else like you. Nobody looks like you. Nobody has those things that you have, like color of your hair or your features, or there's only one you. So that's a gift to us. To be able to recognize people and know that they're from a different community or from a different nation, or but to take into really think about that and what is it that makes them of that land, you know because I think that when we describe, like when I said that I was Cayuga, like that tells me I'm of the Cayuga land. So where was that? Near Rochester. So I can look at that land and say, this is who I am, this is what I get from this place. And when I stand there on that land, like I feel complete, because it's honoring me because I've stepped into this place that was given to our nation of people, and it's there to offer us food, it's there to offer us water and air and all of these things that we're surrounded, but we forget to acknowledge. And I think that we're like that in our own human life, that we forget to acknowledge people, what they are giving to us. Like we don't tell people, oh, you look really good today, or that's a nice shirt. Oh, I like your skirt, or, got a haircut. No, things like that. Like I think that's really important because it's like dressing up the drum. It's like dressing up your community, dressing up who you are, and honoring that. Because I think that's really important. I think, in language when they say, kayo kono nigehwenzodan, like I'm of that land, and what does it tell me? Like I don't think we've looked at that, to see how I would describe myself in that place. Because if I did that, like I would be undescribable. Like you wouldn't even notice I was there because I would fit right into the landscape because of the land, because of my name, because I belong there. Just like a puzzle. You got to find the right piece to fit in to make it beautiful.
I just want to thank you for being a guest on the podcast. I'm super thankful that you're able to take time out of your day and share a lot of the knowledge that you had. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Weha, weya, weha, ya, weha, ya he, yo, ha, ya, weha, ya, he, yo, ha, ya, weha, ya, he, yo, ha, ya, weha, ya, he, yo, ha, ya, we, oh, hey.
In this episode's climate change fact, we're going to be talking about carbon footprints. A carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases that are generated by our actions. The average carbon footprint for a person in the United States is 16 tons, one of the highest rates in the world. There are 3 types of carbon footprints: individual carbon footprints, product footprint, and corporate footprint. An individual's carbon footprint depends on consumption habits. It considers factors like transportation, home energy use for heating and cooling, eating habits, goods consumption, recycling practices, and other lifestyle choices. Product carbon footprint tracks the greenhouse gas emissions from every stage of a product's life cycle. This includes raw material extraction, production, energy use, transportation, customer use, and end-of-life disposal. Corporate carbon footprint represents the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions resulting from its operations, supply chains, products, and services. This includes both direct and indirect emissions caused by the company's activities. Calculating your carbon footprint and finding ways to reduce your footprint can have a positive impact on climate change. In the next episode, we'll talk more on ways you can reduce your carbon footprint. To find out when new episodes are released, follow Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force on Facebook and Voices for the Earth on Instagram. I would also like to say nyawa to Aaron Printup for the music. Nyawa for listening.
Kayowane, kayowane, kayowane,